hopefully that'll give you. Yeah, so before we dive in, we just want to set some expectations about what today is and what it isn't. So this isn't a masterclass. We're not presenting ourselves as the experts or telling you exactly how everything works. The intention is to be a little bit more about exploring prompt engineering together and sharing ideas as a community. So we're going to start off by having a short presentation section where we'll introduce some of the key concepts and the ideas around prompt engineering. And then after that, the session becomes a little bit more interactive. We have a mix of videos, live demonstrations, whiteboarding, Q&A, open discussions, so we can explore how all of us are using these tools in our work. The session's up to 90 minutes. We'll see how we get on. We'll keep things moving, so there's opportunity for participation along the way. And although this is structured like a webinar, it's actually set up as a meeting, which means later in the session, we'll invite some of you, if you want to come off mute and share comments or questions. But for now, please, because it's set up a meeting, please stay on mute just to keep things running smoothly. If anything comes to mind as we go along, feel free to drop some questions or thoughts. There's a Q&A as well as a chat, much like a webinar, so you can pop things in there and we'll pick those up at various points. And there's a Q&A at the end as we get time. The session's recorded, so if you want to stay off camera, you want to stay quiet, that's totally fine. So let's just introduce the people who'll be facilitating this today. So firstly, we've got Jill Dunn. She's works in the BA Community of Practice at Principality, Building Society. And then we've got Kurian Panjagharan, a BA at Tata. I'm Bronya Anderson-Kelly. I'm a consultant BA and PM, and also the tech director of IIBA UK. And last but not least, we've got John Healy, who's a Scrum product owner also at Principality. And between us, we've been exploring how Gen AI is starting to show up in our day-to-day work. And today, we're just really sharing some of that exploration with you. Before we move into the session itself, there's just a couple of quick housekeeping points that we need to cover. I'm going to flick over the slide. There we go. The world of AI is evolving incredibly quickly, as we all know. Some of the stuff that we're sharing today reflects what we know at the time that the session was prepared, and that was largely February 26th. Obviously, we're delivering now early March. So inevitably, some of this stuff's going to change probably sooner than we would like it to. And the second point is that while we talk about how these tools can be used in practice, none of us here that have put this together are legal, compliance or governance experts. So just make sure when you're using these things that you're using them within your organisation's policies and guidance that they give you when using anything in AI tools and data. With that said, let's get on to the session then. Kurian, over to you.
Thanks, Bronya. Hello all, welcome to the session. As we're all curious users of generative AI, let's start with a live poll where each of us can share the task for which each of us use generative AI mostly for. You can scan the QR code that you see on screen and submit your responses. Thank you. I'll present the results window so that we can see as all of you submit your responses. But I can see, some of you are entering your responses. Good. That does not seem to be a clear winner so far. We are getting a lot of responses. Good. Yeah, so it looks like, I think writing better user stories, writing better emails, translations, summarizing, researching, prototyping. Yeah, good to know. We have got document analysis. Good to get that feedback. Hope it is helping each of us understand how everyone is using generative AI. I think summarizing is coming quite popular now. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your response. Thank you very much for that. With that, let's move on to our session. Let's be aligned on the scope of today's session. We'll be starting with the relevance of prompt engineering. We'll move on to understand how to write effective prompts. We'll briefly touch upon some of the capabilities that are offered by AI tools based on LLMs, how to use generative AI for data analysis, and finally close with by discussing any questions that you may have. So that is how today's session is structured. With that, let's start with our first section, relevance of prompt engineering. In other words, why is it important that we learn how to prompt? To understand this, let us take a scenario. If you are an aspiring business analyst, if an aspiring business analyst who meets you for the very first time asks you about the tools and techniques that they need to master to become a successful business analyst, what would you reply? This is what my response would be. I will try to understand more about their background and the kind of work they are involved in. For example, business process transformation, data integration, or something else. Why? As you would all agree, business analysis is a vast profession, and the tools and techniques that we use in one project may be different to another. But let's see what some of the popular AI tools responded to the same prompt. We tried with ChatGPT, Copilot, and Perplexity. This was the response from ChatGPT. This is the response from Copilot. And this is from Perplexity. We have only taken a snippet of the entire response. As we can see in common, all of these provided a long list of tools and techniques which our aspiring business analyst would have found it very difficult to comprehend and not would be something that they would have expected. So what went wrong here? For that, let's watch a video and understand how exactly an LLM works.
Imagine.
I'm sorry, I think there is a tech issue. Hope the video is loading now. Give me a minute.
Imagine you happen across a short movie script that describes a scene between a person and their AI assistant. The script has what the person asks the AI, but the AI's response has been torn off. Suppose you also have this powerful magical machine that can take any text and provide a sensible prediction of what word comes next. You could then finish the script by feeding in what you have to the machine, seeing what it would predict to start the AI's answer, and then repeating this over and over with a growing script completing the dialogue. When you interact with a chatbot, this is exactly what's happening. A large language model is a sophisticated mathematical function that predicts what word comes next for any piece of text. Instead of predicting one word with certainty, though, what it does is assign a probability to all possible next words. To build a chatbot, what you do is lay out some text that describes an interaction between a user and a hypothetical AI assistant. You add on whatever the user types in as the first part of that interaction, and then you have the model repeatedly predict the next word that such a hypothetical AI assistant would say in response, and that's what's presented to the user. In doing this, the output tends to look a lot more natural if you allow it to select less likely words along the way at random. So what this means is, even though the model itself is deterministic, a given prompt typically gives a different answer each time it's run. Models learn how to make these predictions by processing an enormous amount of text, typically pulled from the internet. For a standard human to read the amount of text that was used to train GPT-3, for example, if they read nonstop 24/7, it would take over 2,600 years. Larger models since then train on much, much more. Imagine.
So as you just heard, the basis is prediction, and it is your prompt that decides those probable next words in the response. For this reason, what you mention in the prompt matters a lot, and this is why it is important to learn how to prompt. With this newly gained understanding, a revised prompt for the same scenario that we discussed previously may look something like this. As you can see, in addition to the core task of suggesting the tools and techniques, the prompt now specifies the expected depth and format of the response. It also mentions the context of the task to be done, as well as the information sources to be referred. It also mentions the role that the AI should take and the desired interaction type. As you can see, in the prompt, it is clearly mentioned to ask clarifying questions that may be there before responding. And let's see what the same AI tools responded to this revised prompt. This is the response from ChatGPT. This is the response from Copilot. And this is what Perplexity responded. As you can see, clearly all the responses are now much more easy to comprehend, and clarifying questions are being asked, which will definitely help to take the conversation forward, which is what probably the aspiring business analyst would have been wanting to. Now, as we are clear of the relevance of prompt engineering, let us move on to the next section, which is about how to write effective prompts. In this slide, we have put together a few points based on our research, which, if included in the prompt, will help fetch better results that are more aligned to what you are looking for. It has been categorized into 4: goal, context, format, and improve. In the goal, we can define the task that we want to be done, set the role or the level of expertise at which the response is expected, specify the expected depth. That is, do we need just a high-level information or a more in-depth information? And finally, do we need the AI to just follow your instructions or challenge you? For example, it is less likely that when we interact, we get a response that challenges the approach in which we are proceeding with our task. So if in case we are unsure on how exactly to proceed, you can mention that you're open to be challenged so that you may be suggested a better approach, which will help you achieve your goal. Moving on, context. We can specify this purpose or the context of the work, describe the target audience for which something is being done, specify the information sources or constraints to be followed, as well as give any examples and guidance. For example, if you are working to create a document and you want it to be very similar to some of the previous documents you have created, then it may be wise to provide some examples of those previously created documents so that you can save time and quickly complete your goal and achieve your task. Moving on, format. Here we can specify the response format, the response length, the style or the tone of response, as well as request for any reasoning or assumptions. For example, if you are collaborating with the AI for decision making, if you specify for reasoning or assumptions, In addition to giving the proposed options in the response, you may be also understand the thought process behind that decision. In this way, you will be able to take a more informed decision and use that response to take it forward. The next one is improve. As we saw previously, we can request for clarifying questions, ask the AI to do self-review checks, and highlight any risks or gaps, as well as enable prompt refinement. For example, if you are new to AI or you are unsure on how exactly to prompt for a particular scenario, you can just mention that so that you will be provided support on how to prompt and take it further. Now, that has been a lot of talking from my side. And now let us put this learning into action using a show and tell activity. I'll hand over to Jill and John to take this further. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurian. So we thought we'd take a bit of a risky approach with this one, and to really test what happens with the use of large language models in real life, we thought we'd go with a fairly risky, and we'll do a live bad prompt versus good prompt. So John and I, we worked together and we talked about how the best way we could illustrate this. So we picked a context that everybody would be familiar with. So we imagined that we are creating a new travel agency and we have a niche market and we want to create an app and we want to be able to book flights on our new app. So we thought everybody can relate to that scenario. So let's see how we could use those 4 areas of goal, context, format, and improve to show what might a prompt look like, what might we get as an output when we don't use those, and then what could it look like afterwards. So John, who I work with, is always up for a challenge, and so I'm going to hand over to John, who's going to show us what it looks like in real life. So he's going to screen share his use with Copilot now. And yeah, let's see what happens. Over to you, John.
Right, it would probably help if I unmuted myself to start with. That's probably a good start. Yeah, thanks, Jill. Thanks, everyone. I'm saying thanks to Jill on this one because the idea was, yeah, we can create a bad prompt quite easily, but turns out that who knew that Gen AI is actually quite smart, and even when you kind of feed it a bad prompt, it'll make a real effort as well. So it'd be quite interesting to compare the bad prompt versus the good prompt with a more flushed out sort of content as well. So wish me luck. I'm going to try and share some screens now. So let's see how this goes. So first of all, I've already mentioned. Let's have a look. Entire screen. Okay. So if I hopefully right, can you see the Copilot first of all? I can't see anyone at the moment, so I'm going to assume yes. Shout to me if you can't. Okay. So first of all, let's look at the bad prompt. So I said, as a BA, I want to build a flight booking app based on my departure location so that it's great. So it's not wrong. It's not that bad. Is it useful? Probably not. But let's first of all copy and paste that, and let's see exactly what the output is. It's kind of like asking Alexa, play something good, which never goes well in my house, to be quite honest, but let's see what goes on. Okay, so yeah, as Jill mentioned, I'm using Copilot, and it's just searching and creating something for me now. And I've definitely paid my broadband bill, so it shouldn't be that slow. Anyway, so what it's created is pretty okay content. It has got a core user story. It's included BDD, which I didn't particularly ask for, which is very interesting. It's got scenarios. It has got a user journey. It's also got some UX stuff and some sort of data models as well. However, I won't go through this in detail right now, but one of the things absolutely stood out to me is that even though there's a lot of content there, the output is quite vague. It is definitely generic. It has got some structure in that one. I think in earlier kind of sort of passes, it did lack a little bit of that, even though I've told it ignore and forget everything we've done before. So even though it's a starting point, I guess, but it's still creating more work for us as a BA. And I think that's not really the point here. So if we flip over to the good prompt, I won't read this out in detail, but what I would like to kind of point out within this prompt, I've taken the idea of context, goal, format, and how to improve as well, and added that into my prompt. I suppose the key things is, first of all, context. I'm a BA, worked in travel industry for 5 years, so it's got an idea of my background and experience. The goal I've flushed out a lot more, so getting far more specific kind of points that outputs I'd like to achieve on that as well. Format, I've kind of gone to town and I said I want an epic, I want features, multiple possibly, I want user stories, possibly multiple. And then within each user story, I want a use case, description, what's in scope, customers in scope, out of scope, etc., etc. Bit of a Kanban head, so I've said about right sizing, small enough, and feedback as well, which I think is essential. And also looking at acceptance criteria, make sure there's BDD in there as well. I've asked the tone to be professional and sort of commercially focused, because this is something that maybe I'd want to take to higher stakeholders, execs, etc. And then the last point is that I would also like to make suggestions for improvement. So for me, especially as a Scrum product owner, the MVP and kind of a return on capital is essential. But also, what could we do in later stages as well? And then, there's a view to maybe expand, if options to expand if you prompt even further. So let's copy that. Pop that there. We'll paste. There we go. Right. Cross fingers, etc. Cross for this bit. Okay. So first things first, it's give me a lovely epic. As a PO, I'm very happy to see this, and that's just me being ultra sad. But the fact then we have these features broken down to postcode departure, it goes on and on. You've got the description in there. It's got the customers in scope, out of scope, any NFRs, assumptions. Again, these need to be checked. It's an absolute no-brainer, but it's a really good structure to bounce off as well. So that goes so on and so forth. You've got nice BDDs in there as well. Other features. If I scroll down, I'm hoping this will be quite a bit of content, which is not a bad thing. Yeah, we've got MVP recommendation as well, which is fab. I love a bit of MVP, and potential extra phases as well, which is superb, and some more prompts as well. So I love the fact that it could do process flows. I have experimented with process flows, hit and miss. Great for PowerPoint presentations and exec summaries. Someone mentioned summaries at the start, so it's pretty cool for that sort of thing as well. And I think that's pretty much it. I think the output, given the structure and using the four kind of main sort of points there from the start, I think it's a far better kind of a robust kind of format. I prefer it, and it's something to use on a daily basis as well. Okay, so I'll stop sharing and I'll pass back to Korean if that's okay. I think I'll stop sharing. There we go. Okay. Next.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jill and John. That was helpful. We understood how practically, whatever we learn can be used. Next is a whiteboard activity. I'll hand over to Bronia to take this further.
I think you're muted there, Bronia.
I'm chatting away. We're just going to move on to a short interactive activity using a whiteboard now. In a moment, I'll drop a link into the chat. If you want to click on the link, it'll open you up to a Miro board for this activity. Once you're in the board, it'll look like this. You'll see a question in the middle. What makes an effective prompt according to you? On the board, you'll find some sticky notes that are already there. You can create your own using the left-hand toolbar. Just add your thoughts. It doesn't need to be perfect. A short phrase or idea is absolutely fine. You'll also see the board is organised into the 4 categories that we've just talked about, the elements that we've been discussing. So if your idea clearly fits into one of those areas, just drop the sticky note in there. And if you think of something that doesn't really fit into one of those 4 categories, that's great too. There's another section at the side over on the right there where you can add those ideas. I think people already are starting to think about those in the chat, so that's good. We can pop them in there. As you're looking at the board as well, feel free to react to other people's ideas. You can do that by just clicking on a sticky note, and then you'll be able to see that there's an option to add an emoji reaction, which is a nice quick way to show some agreement or some interest in there. If you've not used Miro before, I know lots of us have, but if you've not used Miro before, it's pretty intuitive. Just click on the sticky note and then just start typing away, or you can, as I say, add one from the toolbar. We'll give everyone a few minutes because I know that it takes a little bit of time to think of those things, and then we'll come back and see what's emerged. Over to you, Carol. If you want to make your way back to the main Zoom meeting window anyway, we'll have a little look at what we've created together. Thanks for adding all of those ideas. I'm sure there's some really interesting thoughts. I was quite zoomed out, so I'm not sure I can see them all. And I've got a rather laggy browser going on today, so we'll see how that goes. Rather than, let me see if I can screen share that. Good stuff. So rather than us trying to manually read through every post-it note, let's just see if we can collect all of those. And we'll use the inbuilt AI sidekick tool. It's a nice example actually of how we can use AI. Who's in there typing, Ray? We can use AI to help us make a sense of a lot of unstructured input very quickly. And we do often deal with this in workshops and stuff. So we've popped a little prompt there together. Just giving it a bit of background on what we're doing, summarize it, asking for into the 4 categories that we've given, and then following some of the rules that we've done as well today for each of the category, asking it kind of a specific format, having given us the context. So let's see what that comes back with. I'm expecting this to take a while because for some reason it is just being a bit slow today, so we'll let that run. Object added. Everything was a lot quicker earlier on, but there we go. Okay, so key themes. Oh, that is slow. You ever seen it this slow, Jill?
It's usually pretty quick.
It might be because I'm screen sharing and in Zoom and have another couple of things on the go, but we'll see.
Possibly. It's normally pretty quick.
Yeah. So key themes, clarity of outcome, be specific about what you want to achieve and the purpose of the task definition, clearly define and describe the task at hand. So these are all coming from your brains. Role assignment, set the AI's role or expertise, e.g. acting as a lead BA. That's always good to say that you're like a bit further up the tree and have a bit more knowledge, come from that angle. Take on that persona. Depth specification, specify the expected depth and the level of detail required. Absolutely. Today, when I was working with Copilot, it was just being ridiculous and going in far too deep into stuff. What is the expected outcome you're trying to get to? Don't always focus on the what. Emphasize focusing on outcomes rather than just tasks. Being clear about what you want to achieve. Simple but powerful reminder about clarity. And goal, what do you want the output to achieve? Define the decision or outcome you'll need. Be specific about the purpose of the analysis. Comprehensive example. Right, well, that's clearly just stalled there, I think, because look, I've just ended. let's kill that. I'll give it a retry while I'm not screen sharing, and if we want to come back to that when we can, but we can pull out some of those. I'll pull out some of those examples in a sec. Let me kill screen sharing. See if I can run that in the background, and we can might pop back to it. Oh, there we go. As soon as I think as soon as I ended screen sharing, it gave me some response. See, yeah, just let that. Might be finished. I think also because there's a few people still in the wherever it may be. Okay. Let me try and screen share that again now that it's had the ability to think. Hopefully you'll be able to see that now. Ola's still diving around in there. Come back to the screen, Ola. So yes, we had a look at the goals there. Yeah, the goals. Giving up a percentage to lead. Yeah, prompt engineering is not an analog, it's a dialogue. Reframes the entire interaction mindset. Context, so background information, provide context about why the task matters in the business situation. Target audience, describe who will consume the output. Absolutely, really, really useful. It's useful to say things like if it's if it's going to the executive committee or it's going to people within your team, it completely changes the language that it produces afterwards. Constraints and sources, really useful on sources as well. I don't know whether we covered that so much. We talk more about context, but that's in general, but that's useful. AI limitations awareness. Great, we've got a little bit on that when we get to data in a bit. Grounding for large content, grounded to avoid hallucinations. Whoever put that in, you can stick your hand up afterwards and talk a little bit more about that. That would be really useful. That sounds really interesting. Format, key themes, structure the specification, define how the response should be structured. So tables, summaries, recommendations, all those things are useful, aren't they? Than just bulleted output. Response length, because sometimes it just goes wild and gives you tons of stuff. Style and tone, LLM specific formatting. Consider the LLM's capabilities and whether output will be consumed by another system. Really useful. Whoever's commented that, also shout up when we get opportunity in a bit. That's really helpful. And readability. Improve section, iteration and refinement, refine prompts based on results, add constraints and examples. Self-critique, this is useful. It was noted in the chat as well about asking AI to like critique itself, perform its own self-assessment, review its own outputs and do that cyclically and iterate a little bit with that. That's a really useful way. I do use that a lot, and that also can reduce hallucinations down as well. I think probably a lot of us are used to doing that to use it as a check on itself. Clarifying questions, request AI to ask you clarifying questions. That's useful when you put them in one by one as well, otherwise it can ask you like 15 all at once. Identifying risks, evidence and citations. Again, another good one for hallucinations. Whoever's called that out, it's absolutely true. If you ask it to cite sources, it appears to hallucinate less because it has to find them. Although I have done that and clicked on some and then it doesn't really have what's there. So you do have to actually click on them if you really want to rely on them. Conversation management, summarize long conversations to maintain context in new chats. That's really useful as well. Whoever's mentioned that, I'd like to hear a little bit more on that as well. So I thought that's really good. Got some really good key ideas there. Thanks everyone for that. Sounds like you're all experimenting and doing some great stuff and iterating and practicing and finding out some really good stuff. That's great to hear in the BA community. Right, I should have stopped sharing, so that should be back with you. Korean, am I summarizing? Please we move on. Yes, see you next, isn't it?
Yes, thanks, Monia. And thanks everyone for participating. That was very interactive. That is why we were able to get a good summary and some additional points than what we had covered. So all of us are now clear on what makes a good prompt and have a improved understanding on that. Let's move on to our next section. We'll try to explore some of the additional capabilities that are exposed by the AI tools that popularly are available and which each of us mostly use. We'll start with the first one, custom instructions. This is something that is available in most of the popular AI tools. It helps us to set reusable prompts so that we don't have to repeat ourselves again and again. I think one of you had put a comment regarding this in the chat. So, for example, if I'm someone who always prefers short and concise responses, then I can set this as a custom instruction in the settings of the AI tool, so that all the conversations that I have, every chat will be giving me a short and a very concise response. The next one is projects. This is something that we could find in ChatGPT. It helps us to group together related chats and files in one place. And it also helps us to set custom instructions and share documents related to specific projects. So if in case we are working on different types of tasks and we want to have custom instructions set for each of these, then projects will be a very useful feature. Moving on, connectors. This is again something that is available in many of the AI tools. So in addition to the information that we share in the chat window that we use to converse with the AI, connectors help in connecting the tool with other applications that we may use. For example, like Gmail, Google Calendar, etc. But this is just a short list. There can be several applications that you can connect to. And how it helps us is we'll be able to directly query data in those applications without leaving our chat window using the AI tool. Moving forward, the next one is scheduling tasks, which I'm not sure whether everyone is very much aware of this. This is again available in some of the tools. It helps you to automate prompts to run on a particular schedule. For example, if we want an alert to be generated every day, say at 4 p.m., and it should be customized based on a particular prompt you have, then you'll be able to use the schedule task capability, and you'll be getting that alert every day at that time. Next, access to local machine. This is something which hit the headlines recently. All of you may have heard about Cloud Cowork. In addition to what we usually do, like using the chat window and using the files and content available in the web, Cloud Cowork and what it helps is it will help us to access the files that are available in a local machine and manage directly and make changes in the local machine, which is something that has come up newly. The next is AI agents, and I'll hand over back to Jill, who will take us forward on this. Over to you, Jill.
Thanks, Kurian. So we've started experimenting with agents in our team, and this is a short video from one of my team, Andrew, who's sort of taught himself around some of the Copilot agent functionality and how to use it in a way to create, generate, and refine his user stories. So I'm going to press play on his video. The audio is a little quiet, so you might want to turn it up a little bit if you're struggling to hear him. It's not you, it's the video. He's just a little bit quiet. So bear with me. I'm just going to screen share and then I'll make it full screen so that we'll play that. Go.
Hi, I'm Andrew, a Scrum product owner working in the savings business unit at the Principality. Wouldn't it be great if we could jot down our thoughts and get AI to create content that we can use straight away? So this short demo will demonstrate how I use a user story agent inside Copilot to help me write better stories in Azure DevOps. Writing stories manually takes time and can be inconsistent if we don't follow a common pattern. I need something that lets me quickly dump my thoughts and get a clean, structured output that my team recognizes. Agents save time and helps me bring requirements to the team in a format that they expect. So as you can see here, I've got a Copilot screen open and I've selected the Create Agent link, and it brings up a tab, an area like this. It has two tabs. It has a Configure tab and a Describe tab. Now I normally use the Describe section so I can talk to the AI agent to help it create the agent for me. So I've given it some instructions here about what I want the agent to do. what fields to use, like a description, a use case, acceptance criteria, and what titles to use with that acceptance criteria. So the agent's talking to me now. It's asked me what do I want to give it a name. So just say use the suggested name. And over on the right hand side, you'll see it's actually starting to formulate the agent for you. And it should come up with the name that it's suggested in a second. Here we go. So once that's done, we can continue talking to the agent to refine it, to make it, to fine tune it and make it work the way you want it to. We can also test the agent out here on the right hand side to help us do that fine tuning. But if we're happy with it, we can create it, or we can go into the configure section, see how the agent is being created, and we can manually update it in this area here as well, without actually talking to the AI itself. So let's go ahead and create the agent. Once you've created the agent, it appears on the left-hand side of your Copilot screen. And there it is, in the top right-hand corner. And we can go straight to the agent and start using it. So what this does, it actually opens up a new chat, but as you can see, it's using the agent that you just created. So you can type anything in here you want now, jot down your thoughts. As soon as you click the enter button, it will give you an output that you need to create your user story. Let's say the feature the team's working on requires a new screen to inform the customer that they've passed their biometric checks. So I paste the use case and requirements into the agent, and I check the output. So I've given it the use case, and I've given it all the different acceptance criteria. And as soon as I hit enter, it should return me all the information I need to cut and paste that straight into a user story. So it's given me a title. It's giving me a description, which is a use case. It's giving me a bit of context. And one of the things I did do when I was designing this was make sure it reminded me to add a Miro link to the signed off UX designs. So I always add a Miro link to my user stories so the team can click on that and go and start collaborating straight away. And then it's got the acceptance criteria area here. So it has the acceptance criteria, the NFRs, which are really important because if I'm creating this manually myself, there could be some NFRs that I miss, but there could be someone here that you don't need. So as soon as you cut and paste this in, you can amend it as you see fit. It's got an in-scope section, an out-of-scope section. And what's also cool here as well, I've asked it to give me some gherkin back, which is the behavior-driven development. So I can cut and paste this code straight into the user story so that the developers and testers can also use it when they're doing their test-driven development. So that's how I use the agent. It helps me move faster while also staying consistent. I also use agents to help me create other types of work items in Azure DevOps, for example, bugs, spikes, risks, etc. Thanks for watching.
Here we go. So really nice beginner introduction to agents. Back to you, Korean.
Thanks, Jill. The next section is data analysis using generative AI. Again, handing it over back to Bronya, who will be taking us through this section.
Data analysis using Gen AI, where are we actually seeing generative AI being used in data analysis today? One common area is categorizing or assessing large data sets. A real world example, I had a catch up with an interview really with an AI cross data analyst kind of expert and speaker. And he gave me a real world example of a data set that they had of 3,000 employees, all with different job titles. And what they wanted to do as part of their work was understand which roles regularly work with data. Now, traditionally, a human might go through each record and assess it individually. which is obviously very slow and quite repetitive. But AI can do that kind of pattern-based classification very efficiently, even though it's not perfectly accurate. So, and often organizations with something like this might be comfortable with like a 90% accuracy just based on understanding a bit of context about the world using LLM, natural language type usage over the job titles, and that dramatically reduces the manual effort involved, especially where you don't need that perfect accuracy. Another example is data tagging, where AI tools automatically classify or label data. Some products like Experience, Aperture Data Studio already use AI to use this kind of work, to support this work. AI is also pretty useful dealing with unstructured information, things like documents, feedback, reports, free text responses, because large language models are fundamentally designed to work with text. We're also seeing AI used to identify sentiment or tone within like written materials that you might use. Is useful analysing things like surveys or customer feedback, or even internal communications, that sort of thing. Maybe even like your lessons learned after projects and stuff. Another increasingly common use is generating code. I think we're seeing a massive shift in that, like even in the last few months, and that getting better and better. So, for example, if you've got a data set that you need to query on it, then AI can often generate SQL queries. And that at the moment, this was probably a month or so ago when I was talking to this individual, he was saying it gets him about 70-80% of the way there, and that can significantly speed up his work. He's then only adjusting it and tinkering with it, as opposed to having to start it from scratch. And one interesting direction that's moving in is that now obviously analysts like us that don't have the technical knowledge can describe the question in natural language. And he gave an example of something that they'd done, which I thought was absolutely fascinating, was they had a data set and they wanted to market to people that were within, say, a certain radius of the office, right? So there's like 30-mile radius of the office. And even though that data set only had postcodes in and only had their office name, they only had their office name like available, say, on the internet or whatever, AI was able to interpret that request and generate the logic sufficient to be able to find that within a decent degree of accuracy. And I thought, based on postcodes, that was pretty good. For anyone who's outside of the UK, dialing in postcodes do pinpoint a house pretty accurately within a section of a street or within some kind of close. So that's a really useful way. Can also assist with things like data cleansing, detecting anomalies, summarizing data sets, even metadata, looking for possible correlations and trends, and even suggesting follow-up questions that you might want to take when you're analyzing data. Great. Do you want to flip the slide on one? So, of course, AI can be pretty helpful with data analysis, but obviously it has some important limitations. One challenge, and I think we've had a little bit in the chat about it, that it's still prone to, or in the Miro perhaps it was, is that it's still prone to hallucinations. I think they're getting a lot less. I'm seeing a lot less than when I've started with it in the early days, quite a number of years ago now. But that hallucinate, for new people on here, hallucinations where they're confidently generating answers, and that's not actually something that's true. And in this case with data analysis, that it's not grounded in the data. And we do find in data analysis that happens more than just in natural language, or just in, when it's searching over the internet and pulling information back. It does happen a lot more in data. Because it's naturally working with numbers rather than just words, which is its strong point. So it's not always reliable when you're working with things like graphs, graph outputs, charts, especially if those visuals need to represent like precise underlying data points. That's when it really struggles. And limitation, is obviously it's better with words and numbers. Can handle simple statistical concepts, so things like averages and sums and stuff. Once you have to start going down to that lower level, doing precise calculations, analysing across multiple variables, then at the moment still it's falling woefully short. That's obviously going to improve over time, depending on the changes that some of these companies are making out there, and how, because obviously that's an area that they're going to want to target. But so at the moment, most organizations are using AI as a supporting tool alongside traditional analytical tools rather than fully replacing them. But obviously there's rapid development in that space. Lots of the technology providers are investing heavily in natural language interfaces for data tools, which means people that aren't developers and coders can then start asking questions conversationally, and creating dashboards even, to get output, which just makes it data analysis quite a bit more accessible than it was before, to lots of us who might not have gone down that path really into data analysis. So verification is obviously essential, validating it against source data whenever you're using it for output. Lots of organizations also restrict you uploading data sets, or even restrict which tools you can use. Lots of places are fully restricted down to Copilot. I know mine is. Context limitations as well. Sometimes AI can lack the domain understanding depending on what you're working on, whether it's something very niche. And so things that existing applications like Power BI, Tableau, SQL are obviously still winning the race at the moment. So that's kind of where it's at. There's probably less advancement in the data side than there is like the natural language side at the moment. Good. And then next slide. So before we wrap up the data section, then we'd really like to hear from you. We've shared a few examples of how AI is currently supporting data analysis, but many other organisations obviously are experimenting with things in different ways. So we'd love to hear from the audience. So is there any, you can please by all means pop your hand up and come off mute. Is anybody already using AI to support data analysis work, in the work that you're doing? What sort of tasks are you finding it helpful for? Or alternatively, what areas are you curious in exploring it next with data analysis? It's probably a bit of a smaller area than in BA, because there's obviously some that do a bit more data than others. So we'll see if we've got anyone with any useful stuff to share. Anybody got their hand up already? Oh, we're all silent. I think data is like a next level anyway in our work. We often, if we're in a larger organization, we often have specific data specialisms, don't we, within jobs, and we might refer to them in those individuals, and that's where we're starting to see the use of AI within that aspect, rather than maybe in our own BA work directly, which is often a smaller element. I think we try and introduce AI into the areas that we feel comfortable getting the output from, and the things that we do the most, and obviously that makes sense. But it is useful to know that these, what they're being used for, and that people aren't just throwing a whole load of data in and expecting the answer to come out great. That's not really happening at the moment. Okie doke. Do you want to pop the next slide? I think we've got a general open and Q&A type discussion. Great. So I think we've even got some Q&A. We've got Q&A, and we've got some. I might have to scroll up in the chat, but let me go into the Q&A first. From Mark. By all means, pop your hand up, Mark, and I'll come off mute yourself as well. As a BA manager, I've created something in a similar vein, but I've designed it to provide feedback, scoring against compliance with invest, acceptance in BDD, etc. But it doesn't rewrite. It says where it needs to be improved, where there are risks, ambiguity, and then it also suggests how it could be sliced into smaller increments. That sounds great. My concern with just building an agent to do it is that it removes the understanding, especially from junior BAs. What are the team thoughts? Jill, probably with your team has done out of our bunch the most with working with agents in work, and you obviously have a good breadth of different experience as well in terms of your BAs and how senior they are. How are you finding that?
We kind of go by the rules of, if you don't know what good looks like, don't get AI to do it. So that if you're not confident what a good output might be, work with someone who does, get their support to sort of validate that it is a good output. So for those people who aren't as experienced in something, they not only get that peer support in trying something out, but they're kind of peer support and feeding back on what the agent or what the prompt has resulted in. So whilst it's good to experiment, and for some of those junior roles, we absolutely not taking anything as done. So it's about validating with the right level of experience to make sure that something is as you would want it to be.
I suppose that's similar in kind of a pairing, isn't it? Sometimes you have even with the physical output that you produce, when someone's so junior, you're getting them to you're getting somebody else to like peer review and maybe mentor a little bit to help support that. I suppose it's adding in a new tool and helping somebody along that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, however they've achieved the output, whether it's through AI or through their own application, then they'd still want to get a peer review to support their development.
Excellent. I hope that answered it, Mark. By all means, come off mute if you've got some further bits to add. Right, let's have a little look in the chat. By all means, it's easier for me to find stuff in the Q&A, so feel free to type into there or put your hand up if you want to ask something. That's great. We'd love to hear from you if you're happy to come on. Session's recorded, so of course there's that too. We had something quite a bit larger from Naeem. I hope that's pronounced properly. I've had some interesting success in generating various diagrams and flows. Since image generation tends to be quite bad at it, it really does. But if someone does not have access to using specific AI diagramming specific tool or features, by using ChatGPT, Copilot, etc., through giving it enough context, I can ask it to create in a textual markup format that's in line with the diagramming tool called Mermaid. Is that Mermaid.js or Mermaids? I can't quite see. So it can either give me the text markup to plug into their free live editor to render a visual diagram and edit there. I think we'll just ask you to just come on and do another webinar for us. Please get in contact. We'll get some of that shown. That sounds really good. Or ChatGPT can provide both the textual markup for me to edit and also the visualization, and I can iterate from within the chat. And Mark's replied, it generally works pretty well and can be imported in Draw.io. I know that there is some embedded tools now within AI tools within some of the process flow type applications and stuff, and I have seen some demos of that, and rather than just creating an image of, you're doing exactly that. You're creating movable objects that you can then play with, and it creates a great start point. Again, I think when we're doing diagrams, we tend to have a picture of how we want it to look in our head. I certainly do. Sometimes it grows, but you start kind of have this vision before you sit down and start creating one of how you think you might be able to lay it out. So when it comes up with something that you haven't got in your head, although that's most of my art, to be honest, that you haven't got in your head, then it kind of almost feels like you're not quite getting to what you want to. But I think that they're improving. Mark, I feel like you've come off mute and you're ready to go. Go for it.
Yeah, I just thought on the Mermaid side of things, it's basically a markdown language, but I've found it, especially where I'm jumping in to try and understand a couple of bits and pieces, it just speeds up that process to get that first draft of a diagram together, and then you, like you say, once it's in a editable format, you can play around with it. But that first draft that might take you an hour to piece together bits of information you're given, if you've got like a process map, it can be from just any multiple different formats. I've done it from an Excel spreadsheet where it's got the process like written out, or whether it's like a user guide, drop it in and it can put it in this text format, and then it's constantly updatable and manageable. It's really useful to play around with on the Mermaid side of things.
Sounds good. We need a couple of you on to do one of these later in the series. Get in touch, because I think people would love to learn those aspects, especially if you've got kind of like practical experience with, you know, with examples and stuff. That's really useful. We've got Andrew. The biggest challenge we face in farm is ensuring personal data is not included by mistake. I mean, yes. Shobin's popped something on about data guardrails. By all means, come on, Shobin, if you want to give a little bit more information on that. But obviously, what we're putting into it and the rules that we have within our organisations are really important. You know, even within things that are locked down, there might be rules around that. Lucid Charter AI, that's the one I've seen a diagram of as well. Alison, sorry. Shobin's about, by all means.
Thanks, Bronya. Yeah, so on the data guardrails, generally organizations do it in a variety of ways. Like we have in our organization Copilot, but then it is behind a prompt verifier. So every prompt that goes into Copilot does go through a series of enterprise guardrails to ensure customer data, personal information is not being put in. And if it finds that the prompt is non-compliant, then it doesn't allow it to go forward. So there is sort of elements being put in picture before the prompt gets injected. And second thing is that depending on the kind of work that one does, be it using ChatGPT or Copilot or Perplexity, anyone, you can always have a base prompt put in place, which kind of identifies if there are things in place, and then it can also instruct the AI not to process it. So there can be a variety of ways which it can be done, but definitely there are tools available. So, and of course, nothing prevents 100% mistake from happening. So as humans, we definitely have to be careful in what we are doing as the first line of defense, but then the second line of defense, AI can also assist in that.
And Shobin, does that include like things that we're attaching in terms of data sets and not and more unstructured data that we might be putting in? Do those guardrails cover those as well, or is it a bit slippery and we can't fully rely on them?
Not 100% yet, but then there are definitely pattern recognitions that goes in, because at the end of the day, the LLM really doesn't parse every single character, every single thing that is put in the data set. It is basically trying to find patterns. So unless it really recognizes that there are things in place, it becomes a little difficult. But then if you have named data sets where at least the column names or the identifiers or tags are there to say name or date of birth, then of course there are flags set up in the parsing tools. For example, there are many Chrome extensions on the browsers itself which can identify a prompt basically without using AI and can understand if there are tags available, then it can flag it up. But again, none of these are 100% safe and secure. So that's why it has been taken very seriously when dealing with specifically in regulated industries, be it medicine, be it banking, be it finance, where there's a lot of PI information that goes around, that there are layers of guardrails being put into place before the prompts are getting into the AI systems.
Yeah. When there's protected and whatever data categories and things, especially, I suppose the industries that cover those is a lot more risk around that. Thanks, Shobin. That was really useful. Shobin, also you have and the next, we'll talk about this potentially at the end as well. There's more AI Insights webinars and events coming up soon, but Shobin will be hosting one. Do you want to give your date, Shobin, for yours to keep an eye out for? I think it'll be released in the next few days, won't it, for booking? So keep an eye out for that.
Thanks for that, Bernie.
Zach has a question. This might sound like a silly question. Is there any? But is there any different AI platforms that's more clever than the others? Just when John mentioned that when you put a bad prompt, the AI still tries its best to come up with anything. And following up on this, would you recommend using multiple platforms? Kurian, you play with quite a lot of different platforms, don't you? Maybe you're the best place to answer this one.
Yeah, I think no, I saw that question, Zach. I think it is for you to try out multiple different platforms and see what is best suited for you. Because when I tried with multiple platforms, sometimes I feel this is good, sometimes I feel the other one is good. So I think it is up to personal choice, and we can try and see what works best.
I think you end up with finding finding a platform or two maybe that you bounce around as well that give you the types of response that you're looking for, either the length or the depth, and it kind of flows a bit more naturally. Well, I've found that anyway. But of course that's not static either, because all of the different companies that provide these LLMs are building at pace, and so you get even posts on like LinkedIn where people are saying, I've just tried the new version that's come out, it absolutely smashes ChatGPT out of the water, and then everybody forays over to Claude for a while, and then some new integration happens on Copilot or something, and then everybody heads over there to do that sort of thing. So it does change actually, and some people do have a preference one over the. It's Apple Android, isn't it? It's the Apple Android argument. But it is worth just. They're very accessible to start. Just going onto onto the website of those ChatGPT and Claude, etc., and going and start creating an account and starting and just talking to it and seeing whether you get the kind of responses that you kind of go, okay, yeah, I like this depth, I like this style, I like this tone. And you can obviously you can tweak those as well, but you do end up with preferences, I think. We've got another question in the Q&A, a bit controversial, I know, but how do we as BAs manage poor quality outputs? I don't think is that controversial? I don't feel like it is. I've recently had an experience where the quality of a deliverable produced by a vendor had not been thoroughly checked, and the person who had produced it didn't own up to the problem. I'm not even sure they realised it was that bad. I find this really concerning. I worry the quality of the analysis in general will really degrade because of the use of AI. So I don't know whether we know that deliverable was an AI produced thing, or maybe we're running it through AI afterwards. I don't know. What do we think, Jill, on this one? Probably as BA manager, probably the most experience with having to deal with vendors and third parties and quality.
Yeah. So this is kind of a bugbear of mine, and I'll do my best to stay out of rant mode. When people see some great detailed outputs of a BA, and honestly they're prompt and they can use AI and use some sort of rough prompting to try and replicate that, but without the experience and the analysis that has led to those outputs, they completely missed the mark. And we've seen experience, I've got experience of looking at a document that somebody's tried to create, not from within the BA space, and there's got non-functional requirements there that are complete guesswork. They're not founded on any detail, not founded on any context. There's problem statements which are completely lacking any sort of examples or anything more than an anecdote. So trying to draw out the quality, I just keep using the same thing as, if you don't know what good looks like, you shouldn't use AI for it. I appreciate though, with a third party or like with a vendor, that's a very different conversation to have. And this is where using, in that scenario, if it was a third party, I'd probably load the document in and see if ChatGPT could find the citations, find the sources, almost ask it if this was an AI generated, and look for the holes to then play back. It's a really difficult challenge when somebody in a professional context gives you an output and tries to pretend it's not AI. So it's a really tough conversation. I do appreciate that. But yeah, there's a few things you can do to help spot it, and a few things you can do in terms of doing some fact checking and source checking to prove it if you need to. But just sort of keep going with that whole, if you don't know what good looks like, don't get AI to do it because you can't check it properly, and just sort of keep going with that to really be certain, and try and bring that into these conversations with those third parties if you feel comfortable doing so.
And I guess it's a case of, yes, you're managing that relationship more than anything. And of course we can use AI to help us with that, can't we? It doesn't have to be for producing. We've talked a lot about producing artifacts or helping us support the work that we're doing, but actually there's a ton of soft skills around around our role. And of course, it can help us reason on those and talk through how are we going to deal with this problem that we've got, and how should we best address it, and talk through scenarios. That's useful. A useful method, a useful use case for LLMs as well. Good stuff. I was scrolling, and then I did see one. I think it was from Kitty. With Gen AI, agentic AI, the role of business analyst is evolving from producing BI artifacts to becoming a human AI auditor, AI orchestrator. We've had chats on this, haven't we, before, Kitty? Please, welcome to unmute yourself and join the chat. But that's, I mean, absolutely, lots of roles I think are heading in that direction, and using AI a lot more in order to produce what the output of their roles, and therefore they knowing how to use AI and knowing how to interact with it seems to be of more and more importance. But
yeah, it's a mindset change, because I come across with quite a lot of BAs. They still don't want to let go. They still want to embrace their core techniques. Oh, I'm very good in writing user stories, writing acceptance criteria. Let it go. You have to let it go. Just let AI do it, and then you just do the human in the loop and just check it, validate that, fine tune it. But just let AI do the groundwork, because I mean, it's a human psychology. Is like someone have been a BA for 15 years, 20 years, and craft really highly skilled in capturing requirement, translate the requirements into structured, agile user stories, Moscow acceptance criteria, Gherkin, Cucumber, all these, yeah. But the world has changed. The world is changing, so AI can do it. Just let it do. Let AI do it, and move on. Just become an AI auditor, validator, and orchestrator. That's all I want to say.
I've noticed I've also missed one from Luigi earlier on. Maybe John, you might want to help with this one, since we haven't thrown questions your way. I'm an absolute beginner when it comes to the use of AI. Is there any advice on where or how I should start and understanding the basics? Is the courses, tutorials, videos, etc.? What do you think? How did you get started? It's always a good way. Oh, do we have no sound? We have no sound from John. You've been muted by the higher powers.
I can jump in if he's not able to speak.
But it sounds like he did have some issues with his video before, so maybe.
Okay.
Or he can speak and he's just doing this because he doesn't actually want to.
That's not like John. I'll start, and if John can jump in, if his audio works, he can take over.
Sorry, John.
So it's honestly just having a go and finding, just like you say, go onto the website. So go onto ChatGPT website, and just in the text box, just write this: I'm a BA. How can I use AI to help me? Just start with a question, start a conversation with it, and then it will give you the next step. So start small, start with what can I use AI for in my role? Yeah. It will give you a bunch of ideas and then move on. John, you're speaking, I'm going to shut up.
I just said, yeah. No.
That's it.
I suppose for me, I think, I love to experiment, and you shouldn't have a fear in what you want to experiment with, but also have a problem to solve as well. Have a task you need to do, something. I came around to it with BDD, and having just countlessly coming back to the point from Kitty, really being okay doing it, but then it was taking me literally hours to do a stack of BDD, and I realized within minutes I could get the similar output, not minutes, seconds to be quite honest, similar output with Gen AI. It's a really simple example, but it makes the world a difference to the point where you're creating agents that you put some content in, and you know, because your experience and your input into that agent, come back to kind of Andrew's point, your output is going to be consistent and also yours. And when it comes out, you recognize it as your work, but the AI is doing that heavy lifting for you. So just experiment. I don't think there's any, I shouldn't say this, but that no right and wrongs. It's what suits you as well, I suppose, really, what your problems are to solve, not generally speaking. That's something else.
Replying to an answer, so I hope to a question. So I hope you didn't just say this, but there was something you just replied into the chat, didn't you, on that one as well, when you couldn't speak about having a problem to solve. It is useful, isn't it, to start with that? Apologies if you just said it.
I'm just going to jump in with one example. It's not at all BA related, but what I found to help show the capability, my oven stopped working over the weekend. Pulled the oven out of its cavity in the kitchen cupboards, took some photos of the back, uploaded them to ChatGPT, help me diagnose what part do I need to buy, do I need an engineer, and the level of detail. Took a photo of the model number, the brand, was like, right, it's a Neff oven, we know how to do it. It's working now without doing anything more than a £15 Amazon order and no electrical training whatsoever. But the amount of information it can obtain from a picture, a problem, some information you can give it, it will ask you the clarifying questions to help get to where you need. Anyway, none of us need to be BAs on oven design or fixing ovens, but just wanted to...
BA doesn't work out, we can always do that. Good.
Just wanted to give you an example.
I'll have to, on the note of ovens, we'll have to draw this session to a close in a second. I don't know if you want to move on to the final couple of slides. I think there's a little key takeaway there. While Corinne is doing that, I'll just let you know that there is a social event happening in Reading on the 26th of this month. If anybody's local to that, or you want to travel over there to have a little social, then pop onto the events on uk.iiba.org to find that. And as I said, there'll be another one coming up, another one of these Insight series coming up that'll go up probably in the next few days. And that is on, I think, the 16th of April. I think that's right. So yes, that will be, Shobin's putting thumbs up, so that will be right. Corinne, do you want to summarize? You've got 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So as we discussed, the key takeaway is, we need to treat LLMs as an assistant. So it is we who decide how best we can use it in our day-to-day tasks. And secondly, the capabilities keeps evolving. So we need to keep exploring to be up to date and make best of use of the AI. Yeah, that's what we need to conclude with. And to close, we have again a Slido. So if you have time, please scan the QR code and you can submit what is your key learning from today's session. Thank you.